Welcome to this video on the human nervous system. We'll be revising how your body detects, processes, and responds to the world around you for your GCSE Biology exam. The nervous system is your body's communication network. It works by detecting changes in the environment, processing that information, and then coordinating an appropriate response. A stimulus is any change that can be detected by the body, whether internal or external. Receptors detect these stimuli, such as photoreceptors for light and thermoreceptors for temperature. The central nervous system, or CNS, is the control center. It consists of the brain and the spinal cord, receiving, processing information, and sending out instructions via nerves. The brain controls complex actions, while the spinal cord relays signals and coordinates reflex actions. Both are made up of billions of specialized cells called neurones. There are three types of neurones: sensory, relay, and motor. Every nervous response follows this chain: sensory to relay to motor. Remembering this order is essential. Sensory neurons carry electrical impulses from receptors to the CNS. A key feature is their long dendron, which extends from the receptor all the way to the spinal cord or brain. Relay neurons are found entirely within the CNS. They act as connectors, linking sensory and motor neurons, allowing the CNS to process information. Without them, communication fails. Motor neurons carry electrical impulses from the CNS to effectors, like muscles and glands. They are characterized by a long axon that extends from the spinal cord to the target muscle, sending instructions out. Neurons transmit information using electrical impulses. These are tiny voltage changes that travel rapidly along the nerve cell. The quicker the travel, the faster your body can respond. Effectors are the final step, carrying out the CNS's instruction. Muscles contract for movement, and glands secrete substances like hormones. Effectors always produce a response. Neurons do not physically touch. The gap between them is a synapse. Information transmission involves an electrical impulse releasing neurotransmitters, which then trigger a new impulse in the next neuron. Neurotransmitters are chemical messengers that bridge the synapse gap. They convert an electrical signal into a chemical one and back again, ensuring the impulse is passed on. Synapses are important because they control the impulse direction, filter out weak signals, and are the site where many drugs, like painkillers, interfere with neurotransmitter activity. A reflex is a rapid, automatic response to a stimulus. Crucially, it doesn't require conscious thought from the brain, making it one of the body's fastest responses. Reflexes protect the body by providing immediate, involuntary responses to harmful stimuli. Examples include withdrawing your hand from a hot object, pupil constriction in bright light, and the knee-jerk reflex. The pathway of a reflex is known as the reflex arc. It is a direct route through the spinal cord, ensuring the response is as fast as possible by bypassing the brain entirely. Bypassing the brain is critical for speed in dangerous situations. Although the reflex happens automatically, you still feel the stimulus shortly after, as the signal travels to the brain after the reflex is executed. The brain is the body's control center, responsible for complex behaviors like thought, memory, emotion, language, and voluntary movement. It processes information from the body and makes decisions based on experience. The brain controls functions like thought and memory for learning and storing experiences, emotion for processing feelings, voluntary movement for deliberate actions, and language for communication. The distinction between voluntary and reflex responses is whether the brain is involved in the decision. Reflexes are faster because they use a shorter pathway through only the spinal cord. The complete nervous system pathway flows from a stimulus detected by a receptor, through the sensory neuron, CNS, motor neuron, and finally to the effector for the response. A neuron is a single nerve cell transmitting electrical impulses. A nerve, however, is a bundle of many neuron fibers. It is important not to confuse these two terms in your exam. Here are 4 key definitions. A stimulus is a detected environmental change. A receptor detects the stimulus. An effector produces the response. A synapse is the gap between neurons. At the synapse, the impulse arrives, triggering the release of neurotransmitters. These chemicals diffuse across the gap, bind to receptors, and start a new electrical impulse in the next neuron. A key exam tip: always state the neuron order correctly as sensory right-pointing arrow relay, right-pointing arrow motor. This sequence is a frequently tested concept, essential for full marks. To describe a reflex arc, first name the stimulus and identify the receptor. Next, trace the pathway, sensory to relay to motor neurons. Finally, state the effector and resulting response. Avoid common exam mistakes. Use the correct neuron order, Remember, the brain is not involved in reflex action, and distinguish between a nerve, which is a bundle, and a neuron, a single cell. Let's review quick-fire facts. There are 3 types of neuron: sensory, relay, and motor. The CNS has 2 parts, the brain and spinal cord. Effectors are muscles and glands. Reflexes bypass the brain. Remember the complete reflex pathway: stimulus, receptor, sensory neuron, relay neuron, motor neuron, and finally, the effector that produces the response. Ensure you can recall each step for your exam. Neurons are highly adapted for fast signal transmission. Their long fibers, like axons and dendrins, allow signals to cover great distances quickly across the body. Another adaptation is the myelin sheath, an insulating layer on many neurons. This insulation greatly speeds up the transmission of electrical impulses. As a quick revision checklist, make sure you know the role of the CNS, the 3 types of neurons and their functions, how synapses work, and the full reflex arc pathway. You've covered the nervous system's core concepts. Focus on the pathway order, the role of synapses, and distinguishing reflexes from voluntary responses for exam success. You've got this. Here is a final summary of the 5 key steps in a nervous response, from stimulus detection by receptors, through the neurons and CNS processing, to the final effector response.